So at Virtonomy, we're accelerating and de-risking medical device development with the use of digital patient twins. So the last 2 days, we have seen a lot of medical device companies here presenting. They all share the same challenges, bringing the device to the market. This is associated with a very long time, can be over 10 years, high cost, which can exceed $100 million. And a lot of these devices fail during the process in the clinical trials or being in the clinical practice. And it's not getting easier with new regulations coming from the FDA, but also in Europe with the MDR, that is making it more and more challenging for these device developers. That's why within the last years, the FDA and other regulators have seen another area coming up besides the in vitro and in vivo testing of medical devices. This is the so-called in silico testing, so coming from the computer. This is now associated as the fourth pillar besides the other three areas. And this is why when you develop a medical device, the later you fail during this process, the more difficult it gets for you and the more cost intense it gets. So a lot of these device developers fail during the validation process. Having a design change during this step is much more expensive than in early stage. Here, 1,000 times more expensive. Even when you're in production, it's over 20,000 times more expensive. Now with new aspects like computer-aided design and also rapid prototyping, so 3D printing, this is shifting a bit more to the left. And with computer simulations, as we are doing, this can be shifted even more to the left. So during concept stage, a lot of these iterations can be done, de-risking the process to fail in a later stage of medical device development. And this is why the FDA is pushing this forward. They are predicting that within the next years, over 40% of the regulatory process will come from such virtual patients and simulations. They are saying when you can only reduce 10% of the risk to fail in a later stage, you can already save a lot of money, $100 million per medical product, or even for large enterprises, a lot more. For example, imagine that the stock market is falling because of a failed clinical trial. And this is our solution. We have created V-Patients, where we have created a huge database of several thousand of data sets, focusing currently majorly on the cardiovascular domain. We have different patients from different pathologies, like severe heart failure patient, but also different valve diseases, also coming from different ethnicity groups and also different gender and this, because there's still a huge need for covering this underrepresented populations that is there during clinical trials. So based on this patient cohort coming from imaging data, but also other data about material properties, ECG signals, we can then create a virtual cohort for performing statistical analysis and statistical testing, for defining inclusion-exclusion criteria, but also worst-case assessment. Combine this with simulation technology we have built up, like solid mechanics, fluid dynamics, electrophysics, to investigate then how the device interacts with the body. The results of this can be defined in a report with digital evidence submitted to regulators, to substituting preclinical and clinical evidence more and more. So this is how the software looks like. You define your patient cohort, which can be human, but also we have gathered an animal database in this. You can integrate your device, so for example, a stent, heart valve, but also assist devices, orthopedic devices, and then perform the virtual implantation of your device in the body. On the first hand, to understand how does it fit into the body, how does it work there with the anatomy. And as a second stage, to better understand the anatomy then, a statistical population analysis can be performed here. For example, to also diversify and cluster between male and female patients to see how does the different parameters of volume, diameters, and so on interact then also with the patient cohort to then in the end also cover the whole population. We can also create statistical models, like here average models with variance analysis to see what are the worst cases of this, for example here the aorta, and then based on this also set up then the simulation outcome. So the user has a very simple environment here to be used. So we define this for you to then have the setup. You can define different parameters and then simulate the outcome. Like for here, in this case, it's the fluid dynamics throughout a heart valve, an interventional heart valve. This is for use of an ISO standard assessment of this for hemodynamic investigation. Like you can see here, then also the fluid dynamics throughout the heart valve. We also look at electrophysics, the electrophysical signals with muscle contraction, expansion, then also for different cases of healthy and diseased hearts. And all of these assessments can also be done then using virtual reality for then better give you an understanding about the patient anatomy, the outcome, and also simulation outcome in this, to better see also how does this work in the patient cohort. So one example is for transfemoral access route. So in this case, it's the IVC that is interested in, also then the diameter in this. So we have a complete population also on severe tricuspid heart failure patients. So in this case, the user was interested in defining these diameters of the opening angle, the opening of the IVC. So we have then the full cohort to also see what are the small patients or patients with small diameter, medium diameter, and large diameter, to assess here on the one hand and better understand the anatomy, but then also to, in the second stage, also perform the simulation on all these patients. In this case here for the access route, and then also the cannular pathway to see where's the critical curvatures, where are critical stress areas, or when you have steering capabilities to also see, does the steering capabilities also work in a more complex setup and situation, for example, coming from IVC throughout the tricuspid valve to the pulmonary valve. Next setup can also then be the simulation of, for example, crimping of the stent in insertion into the vessel wall, for one individual patient, but also for the whole population cohort that you have built up and based on our database. So in this case, these are 50 patients that then the simulation is performed to then also understand the correlation between different material properties like stiffness, but also then the geometric components of the aorta and the outcome that is then on, for example, strain or stress. And this to see also, are there areas of where it's not working, or do you need to define and set up different designs of a device, for example, maybe 4 designs to cover the whole population and not get in any troubles, and also in the outlier regions of this. This is defining more an ISO standard, so 5840, where you have to heart valve that is under conditions of hemodynamics to investigate then the flow conditions. And here this can be done also with such simulation outcomes to see the dynamics of the heart valves. We have also validated this against experiments. It's very, very good agreement on this. So this can then be used to assess, for example, hemolysis, but also thrombus formation risk, and then also orifice area. And this is possible then to investigate not just in a perfect round shape, as very often in experimental testing this is done, but also in oval shapes and all kinds of different parameters in this, to see also under these conditions that are reflecting more and more also than the physics of the body, then how does this work. This is also more demanded now by regulators to have this evidence for your approval. Another example is superficial heart. So this is one customer developing a superficial heart. For them it was needed to understand in what population does my device work. So we have severe heart failure patient data here, where they then can do the virtual implantation of the device to see in what area, in what patient group does my device fit, where does it not fit. For example, also assessing T10 measurement, which is the space within the thorax. And then also to change the device in a way to make it for more patients eligible to implant this device into the body. Also here then electrophysics can be included there to see how does a healthy patient or a healthy heart compare to a heart failure patient, for example, for pacemaker devices, but also other devices in this. Here you can see some of the outcomes from our customers. So they all say that this have significantly saved them time, but also the process and thus speeding up the process, giving evidence that is not possible with conventional sources of evidence, also providing more understanding of the population, of the outcomes in this, and being then a key tool in the product development, but also then in the approval process, where this data from such customers were used for FDA approval, European Commission, but also a Japanese agency for their approval. Thank you very much. If you're interested to learn more, please contact me or visit me somewhere around here. Thank you very much.